Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 150 of the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast. I'm Christine.
And I'm Sam.
Hey, we're back.
We are.
We're back in the saddle.
Were we ever out of the saddle?
Well, we missed last week.
We did.
And just to go back a bit, back in the saddle is not a vegan phrase.
It's really not.
Unless, I don't know, maybe you're talking about the saddle of a motorcycle or something. Regardless, we're back.
Okay.
We are back. Yeah, so we had to postpone last week's live episode.
Yeah.
Due to the Microsoft global outage.
Yes.
That took place.
Now, this didn't actually affect us personally, technologically, because all of the products that we use are Apple products. And
I'm telling you, it's an advertisement for all of those systems to be using Apple products.
It really is.
Right?
Yes, it really is. But what the Microsoft global outage did accomplish was basically stranding, along with millions of other people.
Tons of people. Yeah.
Christine's sister and brother-in-law on their way home from what turned out to be a rather disastrous trip.
Oh, their trip was
to Oregon.
It was terrible. Yeah. And I was house and pet sitting for them. So I had to stay, and they're out of town. Mm-hmm. So I had to stay, at their house until they could figure out how and when they could get home.
Right.
So I took care of their kitties. They have two really cute cats.
They are awesome cats.
Groot and Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I couldn't make it back to do another episode. So we had to re-release episode 104, which is a great episode and I think is worth a second listen.
Which episode is that?
Episode 104 is the one about the dairy industry influencing youth.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah. It's a really good episode.
That's a good one. I like that one.
A lot of good information in there. Anyway, we're glad to be back.
We are.
Yeah. And even during that time, we had some things happen. It was just kind of a downer of a couple of weeks.
It really was. So I'm like almost at a loss right now to try to calculate the things. We were supposed to go to Syracuse. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before.
Yeah.
For a fundraiser.
Yeah, for Briarwood Farm Sanctuary. And we had to miss that.
Yes, we had to miss that. And then we found out that the Panama Rocks Wild America Festival, which we were supposed to vend last week, included entertainment events like a petting zoo and falconry demonstrations.
Included animal exploitation.
Yes.
So we had to back out of that event, and they were not happy with us. But, really, can they not understand? We're a vegan organization. Mm-hmm. We cannot be involved in an event that has a petting zoo.
Well, and it was interesting because, yes, they were upset, and I don't mind that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Right.
It is on us that we should have done more research.
I guess so. I was under the impression that the whole thing was kind of like an arts festival. I didn't even realize that it was animal-centered at all.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, that's on us.
That's on us.
That we did not research.
Totally on us.
Well, and also, when the organizer of this event emailed me back after I emailed him saying that we weren't going to be vending last weekend due to this, he made the point that we had tabled at a Panama Rocks event last fall.
The Fall Foliage
we
Fest.
did, and we enjoyed thoroughly. And he mentioned that, of course, they had animal products for sale as food.
Yeah, which we know and understand.
We knew and understood. And unfortunately, we almost, when it comes to craft events, we almost acknowledge as an unfortunate reality. But he informed me that there had been a petting zoo at that event as well.
And I'll tell you, I walked around that entire event several times. Not once did I see it. I'm not saying he's not being truthful.
Oh, no, I'm sure he's being
truthful. I'm just
truthful.
saying it must have been in another area of the park or something.
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
And had we known that, we wouldn't have been there.
No, we wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking quite a bit. And I think from here on out, we're only going to do vegan events.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way to get around it.
Yeah.
It's the only way to assure that we're not being involved and supporting an event that is involved in some kind of animal exploitation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to limit some of the events that we do, but we gotta stick to our ethics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from here on out, we'll be sticking to Veg Fests. And so our next public appearance will be at the Rochester Veg Fest, which is on the 24th of August.
Yeah, that should be fun.
It'll be really fun, and it'll be our first in-person event since Cleveland.
Yeah.
So we're super excited.
We are. Yeah, a lot of things fell through this year. Like we can't make it to Pittsburgh. We have something else that's going on. And it's just been that kind of a year. Like
it really has.
Things have just been falling through. And
I was supposed to go see my graduate school class for our 20-year graduate school reunion.
Yeah, and that fell through.
So like things have just been getting canceled right and left and center, and it's kind of a bummer, I have to say.
It has been a little bit of a bummer, but we have picked ourselves up from our, by our bootstraps, as they say, and we're just, moving forward. Because what else can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward. But we're back here, and that makes me happy.
Yeah. It's really great.
Yeah. So that's what we've been up to. Sorry to, bring you down with some of that bad news. But, hey, we're here. We're all safe. We have a roof over our head, food on the table, all vegan, thankfully. So, it's all good.
Wow. Where did you just go into like existential realm?
I did. I kind of did. Hey, we have a recipe this week.
We do.
And this is from our vegan kitchen recipe.
Yes, it is.
That Sam just kind of woke up with this thing in her head. I'm going to make this, and made it happen.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah.
So yesterday morning, I woke up and it was quite early. It was about 5 a.m. and Christine, for once, was still sound asleep.
I was still trying to catch up from my sleep because my sister's cats were keeping me awake. So my sleep was really weird for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. So you're trying to get back on schedule.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I woke up really early, and for some reason, it just popped into my head that I wanted to bake something. And one of my favorite things to bake is bread. And of course, most bread is vegan, so there's not a whole lot to veganize. You just roll with it.
Right.
And so somehow from bread, it popped into my head that I wanted to make calzones.
Calzones. And I'm like, that's a fabulous idea.
Yeah.
Let's come up with a calzone recipe.
Indeed. So, I took the pizza dough recipe from my favorite bread cookbook, which is Paul Hollywood's Bread.
Yeah.
If you don't know of Paul Hollywood, he is one of the hosts of the Great British Bake Off, as it is called in the UK, or the Great British Baking Show, which it is called here, because Betty Crocker, I think, has a trademark on the phrase bake off.
Yeah, Betty Crocker owns the phrase bake off.
Yes.
So don't ever try and have a bake off.
Right.
Betty will come for you.
Indeed. So anyway, I fell in love with the Great British Bake Off when I was in Wales several years ago.
It's fun.
It really is. And I just love Paul Hollywood. And let me tell you, that man knows bread.
Oh, yeah. It's a fabulous book.
His recipes are just incredible.
Yeah, and so many of them are already vegan because it's bread-based. And then the ones that aren't are easily veganized.
Very easily veganized.
Yeah.
Because really the only thing that you find in bread every now and again when you're doing something like a brioche or a babka maybe is a little bit of egg.
Yeah.
And so flax eggs are the perfect substitution. They work beautifully. Anyway, his recipes really are kind of, I call them idiot proof.
Yeah.
Because when I first started making bread, I had absolutely no experience. I had only made cookies and cakes up to that point.
Right.
And I started with his bread book, and every single loaf I made just came out perfectly the first time. So I'm like, wow, okay, you really can't mess these up.
They're really well-tested recipes.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're really wonderful. The only thing that didn't quite work out was that one focaccia that I tried to do.
I don't recall.
Oh, well, anyway. I did try focaccia that didn't work out so well. But anyway.
So we made calzones.
Yeah. So we made calzones.
Yeah.
So I went and I made the pizza dough, and we filled them with peppers and onions and broccoli and spinach and black olives and some vegan pepperoni. We had a little bit of beehive, so we used that, and we also supplemented it with some tofurkey.
Yeah, the new tofurkey pepperoni is pretty good.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we added some original chow shreds.
Really good. They melt really well and flavorful.
Yes. And we chose chow because of its meltability.
Yeah.
We did have some Violife mozzarella shreds.
Yeah.
But they just don't melt quite as well.
They don't.
No.
They
So
don't.
we went with the chow, and it was really great. And we put just a splash of pasta sauce, of a Classico
A little bit of red sauce. Yeah.
in there. And then I really think the secret ingredient was the fresh herbs.
Then lots of fresh herbs. Yeah.
Yes. So we did Italian parsley and chives and thyme and just put a whole bunch of fresh herbs in there, folded it over, closed them up. Christine did nice little score marks on top to give them,
they'll explode if you don't.
right, to give them some breathing room.
Yeah.
And then we popped them in the oven for about 25 minutes at 425.
Yeah.
And they were just fantastic.
They were really good. Sam was doubting herself.
I was.
I usually do too when I'm making a recipe. It's not going to turn out. It's a disaster. But I told her all along, I said, they're going to be great. They're going to be great. They might not be the most beautiful calzones you've ever seen because, it's the first time we've made a calzone.
Right.
One of them was kind of blobbish.
Yes.
And the other one was very calzone-ish.
Yeah, the second one turned out okay.
Yeah.
It was just the first in terms of, visuals.
Yeah.
The first one was a little dodgy just because we made the mistake of doing all of the filling and everything on the kitchen counter. And then we were like, uh-oh.
How do we get it to the pan?
How do we move this to the baking sheet? And so, it lost its shape a little bit.
It lost a little bit of its shape, yeah.
But it still tasted really great. And actually, I've been thinking about those calzones all day.
Yeah. And I'm going to write out the recipe, and the full recipe will be available on our Patreon. If you're a member of our Patreon community, you'll have access to that. You can make your own calzones.
Cool.
Let us know how they turn out. I can also include a link to Paul Hollywood's bread book in the show notes if you want to get yourself a copy. Like I said, a lot of the recipes, because they're bread-based, are already vegan, and some of the ones in there are super easy to veganize.
Yep.
So that was our recipe,
Indeed, it was.
and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Me too. Like, seriously, I'm going to have to make those again in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
They were super yummy.
Yeah. Hey, it's time for our noteworthy section. Well, Wayne Sung has done it again with his blog. This week's noteworthy section is based on an article that Wayne Sung wrote titled How Animal Rights Challenge Political Violence. And this comes from his Simple Heart blog at simpleheart.org.
Speculation has been rampant as to why Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, attempted to assassinate Donald Trump. Ohio Senator and newly anointed vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance immediately claimed, without evidence, that hostile rhetoric from the Biden campaign, quote, led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. In contrast, some commentators on the left pointed to Crooks's registration as a Republican and suggested he was a, quote, mentally ill groupie activated by Nick Fuentes ranting about Trump being controlled by Jews. But this all misses the point. We will probably never know with certainty why Thomas Crooks, as an individual, tried to kill Donald Trump, but we can look at broader trends to see why we, as a society, are suffering from increasing political violence. These trends include a steep increase in loneliness, especially among young Americans, the normalization of aggression on both the left and the right, and a steep decrease in trust in virtually all the institutions of modern life. When these trends are combined, they are like a tinderbox for political violence. It's no surprise that figures like Thomas Crooks erupt. What is perhaps more surprising, however, is the possible solution to all of these trends: animal rights. As the great Russian author Leo Tolstoy argued, as long as there are slaughterhouses, there will always be battlefields. Tolstoy believed that we cannot end violence among humans until we end the war on animals. To unpack why this is the case, let's look at the 3 trends driving us towards political violence and how they can be challenged by a movement for animal rights. Increasing loneliness. Perhaps the single factor that unifies all mass shooters is that they are disconnected from the people around them. From Nicholas Cruz to Elliot Rodger, the biographies are eerily similar. They were all extreme loners. That is true of Thomas Crooks as well, who was rejected from his high school rifle club and sat alone at lunch in high school. One of his former classmates says Crooks was bullied almost every day and describes him as an outcast. Lonely people are more likely to commit violent acts because they think they have nothing to lose. One study found that increasing social connections in a community was associated with a 21% reduction in murders. That is important because the disconnection that afflicted Cruz, Rodger, and Crooks is increasingly afflicting millions of young Americans. In 2023, the Surgeon General of the United States noted that there has been a shocking 70% decrease in the time that Americans in the 15 to 24 age range spend in person with friends over the last 2 decades. That trend has been supercharged by smartphones, social media, and the lockdowns of COVID-19. And Americans now spend less than 3 hours per week with their close friends. If this continues, the age of social media may soon become the age of violence.
Yeah, and we can experience some of that with Sam's students. They went through the whole COVID lockdown.
Absolutely.
They spend an enormous amount of time on their devices and alone with those devices. And those students, over the last couple of years, Sam has found that those students are extremely lonely and fragile, and they have issues because of it.
Well, I mean, and to refer to all of them would be...
Well, I'm generalizing.
Yes, it would be a huge generalization. But at the same time, there is kind of a trend seeing students who are less able to connect in an interpersonal way,
right,
who are much more comfortable on their phones, who as soon as a class is over, the phone is out and their eyes are down.
Right.
And I think that that's partly because of the lockdowns and, you know, just the fact that most of these young people have grown up with a smartphone in their hands, whereas we did not. But also just that social media and its pervasive presence gives them a false feeling of connection.
Yeah, a false community.
That making connections online is more important or more valuable than making connections in a direct and interpersonal way.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see those changes over the last, let's say, 20 years.
Yeah. And so Wayne goes on to talk about who do we spend our time with, right?
Yes. He shows very clearly in his article that Americans 15 and older are spending a lot more time alone than they did just 10 years ago. And this trend started before the pandemic.
Yeah.
In 2013, people were spending almost no time alone. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing either.
Right.
As someone who enjoys her alone time, I'm not saying that zero alone time is a good thing either.
Right.
But now, okay, in just 8 years, because the last date on this chart that I'm looking at is 2021, the amount of time spent alone has gone from the baseline to 9 additional hours per week alone in just 8 years. Whereas from the baseline, the time spent with friends or with companions has dropped by 4 to 6 hours per week.
Right.
So that's quite a difference. There is, however, one data point pushing back against this trend: the time that Americans spend with their companion animals. In 2021, the amount of time the average American spent with a non-human animal hit a record high. Perhaps most interesting, however, is who is spending the most time with animals. Childless Americans under the age of 40.
That's right. It says childless cat ladies.
How apropos.
Although neither one of us are under the age of 40, but yeah.
No, we are definitely not.
I can tell you I spend most of my time with animal companions.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes. I spend, well, it depends on what time of year you're talking. Between August and December and January and May, I spend most of my time with young people between the ages of 18 and 25.
Right.
Yeah.
The ones that aren't spending time with anybody other than you.
Oh, God, that's terrifying, isn't it?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, so that's my primary social group right there. And then, of course, colleagues, and then, of course, you, and then, of course, the companion animals, our beloved herd. But companion animals are becoming more and more the source of, like, kind of that immediate, like, physical and emotional connection.
Right. Like, how many emotional support animals do you see now people have? Right?
I've actually seen a few. I wasn't even aware that students were allowed to have emotional support animals on campus until about, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Perhaps right when we were coming back from COVID initially, 2-3 years ago. And now I keep hearing of more and more students. Oh, yes, I'm registering my dog, my cat, my ferret, my guinea pig as my emotional support animal.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool. I wish I could have had an emotional support animal in college. That would have been great.
It would have been, yeah.
I would have thoroughly enjoyed that.
But you had friends.
I did.
Not saying that these kids don't have friends.
They most certainly do.
They just, according to that chart, aren't spending enough time with them.
Yes. It's just a different time.
Wayne goes on to talk about how one group has embraced pets faster than any other.
Yes, and that is the young, under 40, married, and childless. In other words, it is precisely the group of Americans who are growing even more lonely, the young, who appear to be spending the most time with companion animals. And this fact has political significance. If violence is associated with social isolation and animals help us with social isolation, then animals can help us stop violence. Anyone who has spent time at an animal sanctuary understands this. There are few connections more restorative and peaceful than the connections we make with animals rescued from abuse. Imagine if Thomas Crooks had a rescue dog he loved. Perhaps that connection would have saved him and his victims from violence. Next, we have normalizing aggression. In June 2022, the Southern Poverty Law Center, one of the nation's most renowned civil rights organizations, published a poll that examined the extreme views of the American right, including the so-called replacement theory that motivated a mass shooter in Buffalo. However, there was one shocking finding of this poll that the SPLC failed to highlight. Young Americans of all parties were increasingly open to the use of violence. Indeed, young Democratic men were the most supportive of assassination as a tactic, with 44% indicating they would approve of murdering a political opponent who was harming the country.
Those young Democratic men need to study their history, because assassination in any political arena, in any part of any party, only makes things worse. Well, if Donald Trump had been killed, it only would have made things worse.
Well, of course, but we don't even need to get that far. Can we just please agree that violence in general is not to be glamorized, is not to be supported,
right,
in any way?
Of course.
And so the idea that 44% of young Democratic men approve of the idea, at least, of assassination, I find that really disturbing.
It's very disturbing. That is a big number.
It is. And I'm looking at, the partisanship chart that is going on here that says younger Democratic women approve of the idea of assassination by 32%.
32%.
Whereas older Democratic women, and I'm assuming we would be in that...
Yeah, we unfortunately are.
Category, yes. Only 9% give credence to that idea.
Yeah. The fact that anybody gives credence to that idea is disturbing.
Yes.
But the 44% of younger Democratic men, that is really disturbing.
Yes. But regardless of what party you're looking at, the difference between the younger generation, so let's say the under 40s, and the older generation, the over 40s, is astonishing. In all cases, with the exception of older Republican women, the older generation's quote unquote approval of assassination is in single digits.
Yeah.
Whereas in every case, the younger generation's quote unquote approval of assassination as a tactic is 30% or more. So you're more than tripling, and in some cases, going 7 or 8 times the approval of previous generations.
Yeah, and Wayne himself had trouble believing these statistics on this chart.
Yes.
From Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah. As he says, the results seemed so extreme that I did not believe them when I read them in 2022. But then I started asking people in my network, and I was shocked by what I heard. I mean, yes, one person told me when I asked if they'd support assassinating Trump. What do you mean by yes? I'm talking about murder. If that's what it takes, democracy is at stake. In the days since assassination went from hypothetical to reality, I've seen numerous people in my social network bemoaning the fact that Thomas Crooks's bullet missed. Nobody's been this disappointed by 2 inches since Stormy Daniels, one post read. That's an extremely poor taste, if you ask me. But,
yeah.
Okay. And explicit calls for murder are merely the tip of the spear. Aggression towards one's adversaries, ranging from insults to physical assault, are becoming a normal part of American politics. In 2017, Montana's Greg Gianforte body-slammed a reporter and smashed his glasses, then was rewarded by voters in 2020 with the governor's office. It should come as no surprise that, in this political backdrop, someone like Thomas Crooks might take things to the next level. Where aggression is normalized, why not move to assassination next? But here, too, animal rights offers solutions. The animal rights movement, perhaps more than any other modern movement, has normalized compassion towards even our adversaries as a basic principle of our work. After all, 99% of Americans are participants in the system of animal abuse we are trying to stop. Acting with aggression is counterproductive with that backdrop. But the animal rights movement's embrace of compassion towards our adversaries is not just strategic. Leaders within the grassroots movement, from Animal Rising in the UK, which makes love one of its basic values, to Tama Borar in Sweden, which left a plate of vegan cookies for farmers after performing an open rescue, have embraced nonviolence as an essential part of who we are, not just what we do. This follows in the footsteps of Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of the beloved community, which aims to win over adversaries with the power of love. In this regard, the animals are our teachers. They do not hate those who hurt them, and neither should we. If Thomas Crooks was born into this environment of love rather than the politics of aggression, then perhaps he would have come to the Trump rally with a box of cookies rather than an AR-15. And finally, decreasing trust. The third and most important trend driving political violence, however, is declining trust. I've written previously about how trust in American institutions is hitting historic lows, and no institution, from church to media to government, has been spared in this crisis. This is deadly for human civilization, not just because it prevents cooperation, but because low-trust societies tend to have high levels of violence. Trust, however, is not just a knob that we can adjust. It is the result of the cracks that Americans are seeing in modern systems of representative democracy. It turns out these systems are neither representative nor democratic. And when 150,000 plus people are dying deaths of despair every year, and tens of millions are one medical bill away from financial ruin, it pushes people like Thomas Crooks to a breaking point. The system is no longer working for people. It is preying on them. A predatory political system is a destabilizing force in human civilization. And over the long term, if it is not corrected, our entire society will fall apart. I have called this the law of social entropy. To avoid collapse, society must move towards greater equality, including animal rights. Pursuant to this law, providing rights to animals would signal that our society protects even those who are most vulnerable against those who hold the greatest power. That signal, in turns, allows all of us to trust the system to act with integrity when we ourselves are relatively powerless. Like a Jenga tower with missing blocks, a society that fails to support its most vulnerable parts is bound to fall. We are seeing the law of social entropy unfold, not just with Thomas Crooks, but with violence across the globe. People see the cruelty of the system towards human beings and animals, and they can't help but lose trust and lash out. But imagine if Thomas Matthew Crooks looked around and saw a different system, one where our governments and political leaders acted with kindness towards all sentient beings. Imagine Donald Trump railing against gestation crates and high-speed slaughterhouses rather than immigrants and Democrats. Imagine Joe Biden condemning violence against all animals rather than just those of his favored species. That is the sort of leadership and system that all of us could trust. In this way, the promise of animal rights is the promise of a better world for us all, and perhaps the only true path to peace is to end the war on animals once and for all.
And again, another brilliantly written piece by Wayne Sung. When I initially saw the title of that article, you do immediately go, what is he talking about? How is animal rights challenging political violence? But wow, did he ever make the point?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is a matter of, it's so funny, especially the last section that talks about trust. I very recently read Pete Buttigieg's, if you get the apostrophe S in there, that's a tricky one.
That is a mouthful.
Yeah, Pete Buttigieg's book titled Trust.
Yeah.
And it talked throughout the book about the breakdown of the general population's trust in our system, in our governmental systems, small and large, and how...
And part of that is purposeful.
Oh, yes.
It's planned.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there is definitely purposeful division. There is definitely purposeful creation of mistrust. Yeah, I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to see those parallels drawn in this way as well. And yes, as always, Wayne's writing is extraordinary.
Yeah. And I can provide a link to that article if you'd like to read the article for yourself. He also includes some charts that we were talking about and graphs that we were talking about. And there's a couple of videos embedded in the article. So
Indeed there are.
I'll include a link in the show notes for it. And staying on that vein, we're going to move on to our main topic.
Because, of course, since Wayne wrote that article, and it was published on July 16th, the political landscape has changed a bit.
Yeah, things have shifted kind of dramatically, and it probably comes as no surprise to you listening that we're voting on the left. And as I would assume that a lot of our listeners will. So I thought we better take a look at Kamala Harris's record where animal issues are involved.
Yes, absolutely. Because even though for us, Kamala is the clear choice, there is no choice between her and Donald Trump.
For us, no, there is not.
No, there is no choice for us. But it's still a good idea to know where she stands on issues that are important to us.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that we are single issue voters.
No, definitely not.
We're definitely, we definitely want somebody that's going to act in a way that supports many social causes. But I thought we would take a look at where she stands as far as animal issues go.
Yes. And so, this coming from animals247.org, Merritt Clifton has given us a really wonderful breakdown on Kamala's voting record where animal rights are concerned.
Yeah. Thank you, Merritt Clifton and Animal 24/7 for doing some of the work for us.
Absolutely. So U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, endorsed by President Joe Biden to become his successor as Democratic presidential candidate in the November 5th, 2024 general election, would become not only the first African-American female and first Asian American candidate to head the ticket for a national political party, but also the first presidential candidate to have endorsed, helped to pass, and helped to enforce strong, specific pro-animal legislation throughout her political career.
And that is good news.
That is wonderful news. And this includes a number of different issues. So, for example, two longtime legislative goals of VP Harris's that have now been achieved were the December 2020 passage of the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act and the December 2022 passage of the Big Cat Public Safety Act. The Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act prohibits race day horse drugging and authorized the creation of a new National Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority. Enforcement was recently delayed in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi by the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, contradicting a 2023 ruling by the Sixth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals.
Now, this is heading in the right direction. Well, we would like to see horse racing banned altogether.
Certainly. Thousands
of horses die annually due to the horse racing business.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like a flat out abolishment of horse racing, but this is a step in the right direction.
Yes. And with all of these policies, we are looking at steps in the right direction. We're not looking at any policies that completely fix the situation.
Right. We'll take what we can get. I'm going to include a link to this article because this article links to another article titled Trump Appointed Judges Stall Horse Racing Safety and Integrity Act Rules, so you can find out how the judges that Trump had appointed have stalled this legislation.
Mm-hmm. The Big Cat Public Safety Act restricts possession of large and exotic cats to zoos, accredited sanctuaries, universities, and government agencies. Now, again, this is a step in the right direction, but we would love to see a world with no zoos. Yes, let's get all of the big cats to sanctuaries. I'm not crazy about the university designation because frequently when animals are designated to universities, it's for research purposes, and that's no good for sure.
No bueno.
And government agencies, yeah, maybe not so much. Because again, we're probably talking about animal testing situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So not great, but it does provide some protection to larger cats who have been exploited for entertainment purposes.
Yes.
So again, it might seem like a small step.
Baby steps.
But it is a step. VP Harris, throughout her career, has also advocated for farmed animal welfare legislation. Now, let's be clear here. We're talking welfare, not rights.
Correct.
Not liberation.
Correct.
Okay, so very different things. And yes, I am all for increasing animal welfare standards while we work to ensure liberation. So she has opposed measures such as the EATS Act, which is now before Congress, which would prevent states from excluding the sale of animal products and byproducts not produced in accordance with those states' own animal welfare standards. Now, we've talked a few times about how states will have established animal welfare standards that are then completely ignored by corporations in the production of whatever it is that they're selling to the public.
Right.
And so the fact that this would, if we can prevent the EATS Act, it would then require corporations to exclude such products from their wares.
Yeah, states like California, for instance, that just recently passed legislation that gives certain animals larger areas to live in.
Mm-hmm.
If those states can then buy meat from the next state over, from Nevada or something, that was not raised under those restrictions, then, yeah, this is good legislation.
It is. During her time as a U.S. Senator from California, Kamala Harris addressed a letter to Eric Mills of Action for Animals, saying animals deserve to be treated with our compassion and respect. And as Attorney General of California prior to running for the U.S. Senate, I fought to promote animal welfare and enforce protection laws. This does seem to be true. She did defend laws that restrict the forced overfeeding of ducks and geese, and laws that prohibit harvesting sharks for their fins. She also defended laws that require stores in California to only sell eggs from free-range hens or hens kept in cages that allow full range of movement.
Again, baby steps, but still steps.
Yes. Indeed. And we all know that the free range designation is a bit of a sham.
It's a fallacy.
Yes. But again, making sure that hens are kept in cages that allow full range of movement is very important. The idea that battery cages cannot be used in the state of California is a great thing.
Yeah.
She does also recognize that there is a lot of work still to do regarding federal protection for companion animals, for farm animals, for wildlife, and for all creatures, basically. And during her 2016 Senate campaign, she issued a platform pledge that she would fight for nationwide protections for animal rights. She has pledged to protect the rights of animals by supporting humane legislation, opposing government programs that use taxpayer funds to harm animals, supporting initiatives to protect animals and for adequate enforcement of animal welfare laws, and opposing inhumane laws or those which weaken current protections. Now, all of this is a good thing. I'm especially intrigued, I suppose would be the word. It's the idea of opposing government programs that use taxpayer funds to harm animals. Because here we're talking about farm subsidies.
Yeah. I mean, all of our tax dollars, even as vegans, are going to aid and abet the slaughter of farmed animals.
I mean, not exclusively, but it's one of the things that our taxes go to, yes.
Along with, building bombs and all kinds of stuff that we don't agree with.
True.
So that's good to hear.
Yes. Ms. Harris also supports strong enforcement to crack down on puppy mills and ensure humane care for dogs in commercial breeding operations. I personally would like to see commercial breeding operations cease and desist. But again, baby steps.
And statewide laws have been banning the puppy breeding.
Yes. And so the fact that she is looking to make this a national
to push for federal laws.
Yeah, to push for federal laws as opposed to state laws is really quite wonderful.
Yeah.
She is also pushing for more humane treatment and population control of wild horses by the Bureau of Land Management. She has promised to fight for greater funding for the development and approval of alternative chemical testing methods and pledged to support continued funding for wildlife conservation, habitat protection programs, and efforts to combat poaching. Harris further pledged to oppose any efforts to weaken the Endangered Species Act, as she consistently has. Harris continued that she supports legislation to prohibit monkeys, chimpanzees, and other primates from being shipped across state lines for the pet trade, another goal which has not yet been achieved. And she finally mentioned that we shouldn't forget that entire species are at risk for extinction because of climate change. While Harris is not a vegetarian, she has mentioned in campaign appearances that she would support changing the U.S. dietary guidelines to reduce the recommended intake of red meat specifically because of the contribution of meat production to global warming.
So that's just a little bit of the legislation and some of the things that VP Harris has done in her career, both as an attorney, the Attorney General, and as a senator.
Yes.
To help animal welfare.
Yes. And so while not an A+ report card, I would say it's strong enough to be going on with.
Yeah.
It also gives me the idea that Vice President Harris is at the very least aware that there are considerable issues with the way that non-human animals are treated in this country and around the world.
Yeah.
And she acknowledges that it's not something that can continue to be ignored.
Right, right. And you don't often hear politicians speaking on animal issues, so it's refreshing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is refreshing. So, yes, I'm delighted to hear all of that. Yes, I wish that all of these policies would be a bit more ambitious. Yes, I wish they would go further.
Sure.
But as you said, for now, we'll take what we can get.
We'll take what we can get.
Steps in the right direction.
Exactly. And that brings us to our assignment restaurant SOS. This week's restaurant is Saint Veg in Rockville, Maryland.
Molly Kay nominated Saint Veg as one of her favorite vegan spots. She particularly loves their Flavor Bomb sandwich. Founder Anne has been vegan since 2005 and is madly in love with animals. That is why at Saint Veg, along with striving to promote the benefits of eating plant-based, we also strive to promote kindness towards animals. Saint Veg is also available for franchise. They are currently located at 14929 Shady Grove Road, Unit M, in the Falls Grove Village Center in Rockville, Maryland, 20850. Their hours are Monday to Saturday from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah, and let's take a look at Saint Veg's menu,
You
which
do
is
love looking at menus.
my favorite part. Okay, right on the first page of their menu, it says our produce and soy are organic and locally sourced. All sauces and spreads are made in-house from scratch and are gluten-free. Every dish is cooked fresh to order.
Oh, these are lovely.
So in the organic shareables section, we have mini sunshine cakes. Those look good.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Yeah, and it's carrots, seasonal mushrooms, jicama, served with our signature sauce, meticulously cooked on our custom-made cast iron pan to create mini cakes that are crispy on the outside and soft on the inside.
They've got some beautiful fresh summer rolls. They've got some crispy cauliflower bites.
That's what we would be getting.
Hello. Yes.
Oh, tater tots.
There's some tater tots. We've got some veggie crispy
and
rolls.
Look, these are 100% fresh grated potatoes made into tater tots. Okay?
Nice. Very nice.
House-made tater tots.
It looks like they've got some beautiful bowls. I am already completely committed to the Mumbai bowl. House-made potato chickpea croquettes with spicy coconut cashew sauce, garnished with pickled mustard greens and chopped cilantro over rice.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, it does.
They have spaghetti and veg balls.
They also have a Japanese katsu curry bowl. So this is crispy house-made lentil katsu cutlets with a house gravy, potatoes, carrots, green peas, apples, garnished with chopped green onions and pickled radish. Again, I am all kinds of there.
Yeah, and the pictures on their menu
are beautiful.
Yeah, they look really delicious. They have handhelds. There is the Flavor Bomb. They have a Flavor Bomb pho dip sandwich.
Ooh,
oh, come on.
That looks good.
That looks good.
As does the shredded medley banh mi.
Yeah, shredded tofu. Let me know if you've done this shredded tofu thing. I've seen other people do it. I have yet to do it. It looks like a really cool way to prepare tofu. You shred it like on a cheese grater and then like either bake it or put it in the air fryer. It gives it a little more texture and then you can add a sauce to it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then it takes on kind of like a pulled porkish kind of texture.
I think I would like that.
Yeah, we'll have to try it. I haven't tried it. They have a meatball sub, which they call their veg ball sub.
They've got
the Mumbai sub sandwich.
That's what I was just looking at, the Mumbai sub sandwich. Again, those house-made potato chickpea croquettes with spicy coconut cashew sauce, chopped cilantro on a fresh baguette.
Oh my gosh. It's basically like an Indian meatball sub.
Yes.
It looks so good.
Yes, it does.
They have a veg loaf banh mi. They have a house-made no guilt burger, which is a house-made lentil patty. Mm-hmm. That looks good. The Mumbai burger. So this Mumbai thing carries out through
It does.
I like that. And of course, they have salads and soups. They have a pho.
Oh, that pho looks amazing.
And the list of things that's in the pho is amazing.
Rice noodles, broth, cauliflower, carrots, slow-roasted barbecue mushrooms, organic baked tofu, bean sprouts, chopped green onions, cilantro, fresh basil upon request. Ugh, it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, take me there. Take me there now.
And then as sides, they've got veg balls and koftas and pickled veggies, mustard greens, white rice, brown rice. And you could also just get a side of pho broth if you were so inclined. So this looks fantastic.
If you're ever in the Rockville, Maryland area, definitely check out Saint Veg.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have to make, this is like, I think the second restaurant from Maryland.
It is. We did have another one near Baltimore.
Yes. So now we need to do a Maryland road trip.
It seems like Maryland's got it going on.
Yeah, for sure. So for all of you Marylanders out there, if you know of more, keep them coming.
Yeah.
Because then we'll do a Maryland specific road trip.
Yeah. And even if you're not in the Maryland area, if you have a favorite vegan spot that you go to and you want to make sure that they stay open, because that's why we started this, because so many vegan restaurants are closing, please send us your favorite vegan restaurant, why you love them, what you order, where they are, and we'll feature them on our Restaurant SOS.
We sure will.
Yeah. That brings us to our favorite portion of the show.
Must be listener shout out time.
It's listener shout out.
Just want to give a shout out to all my fans watching. I love you guys. I love you.
This week's listener shout out goes to Jean Briggs. Jean follows us on Facebook and listens to the show. She's a vegan, an animal lover, and a vocal advocate. Thanks for listening, Jean.
Yeah, thanks for listening, Jean. And send us your t-shirt size and address so we can send you a Compassion and Cucumbers swag bag. You can either text us that information using the link at the top of our show notes. Be sure to include your name. Or you can email us at compassionandcucumbers@gmail.com or simply DM us on Instagram or Facebook.
Per usual, we need more entries for shout outs.
We really do. I'm really down to like one or two at this point.
So, help a girl out here.
Yeah.
And send us some nominations. You don't have to self-nominate. I know that can feel a little weird. Yeah, so you can nominate someone else. That's super cool. Just nominate your favorite vegan. So if you want a listener shout out or you want to nominate someone for a shout out, just email, DM, or text us. Let us know what you think of the show and tell us a little bit about yourself. And don't forget that a shout out enters you into our Meeson Chef Knife giveaway later this year.
We have a vegan org of the week.
We sure do.
Yeah, this week's vegan org of the week is the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee.
I want to go to the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee so badly.
You can't see the elephants at the Elephant Sanctuary, which is one of the reasons why I love them so.
Yes, but that's also a good reason to go.
They have like an education center, but
that's what I'm saying.
You cannot spend time with the elephants, which is fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Yeah.
The Elephant Sanctuary exists to provide elephants with individualized care, the companionship of a herd, and the opportunity to live out their lives in a safe haven dedicated to their well-being, to educate the public of the complex needs of elephants and the crisis facing elephants in the wild. The elephants' habitats are closed to the public. You can observe the elephants anytime via their live streaming elecams. You are also invited to visit the Elephant Discovery Center in downtown Hohenwald, Tennessee, which features interactive multimedia exhibits, a theater, an outdoor classroom, and regularly scheduled programming about elephants, the purpose of the sanctuary, and conservation efforts in the wild. There are no elephants on exhibition. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit elephants.com/discovery-center.
Fabulous organization. They rehabilitate elephants from zoos, elephants that they ship them from all over the world, from other so-called sanctuaries where the elephants are being exploited for money. And it warms my heart that they don't turn it into an elephant zoo.
Yeah, it's so wonderful.
They don't allow people to interact with the elephants so the elephants can live their natural lives the way they're meant to live them.
It is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I guess it's time to wrap this baby up.
Go for it.
We have just a couple of calls to action. Per usual, we are begging you to join the Agriculture Fairness Alliance's Vegan Voter Hub, and we always include a link in our show notes. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to our YouTube. And if you'd like, leave us a review and a rating. And don't forget that you can text us about anything using the link at the top of our show notes. Text us show ideas, recipes, cookbook recommendations. Text us your favorite restaurant. Text us anything you want. And don't forget to include your name.
And with that, it's time to sign off. You have just listened to episode 150 of the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast, and there's nothing left to say but where cukes and compassion are always the fashion on the podcast.
Thanks, James.
Have a great week, everyone.
Hey, we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
We love you.
We really do. Bye-bye.
The end.
If you'd like to support the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast, well, you can do that by hopping on over to our Patreon page and becoming a patron. We have all the recipes from our vegan kitchen series up there, and we'll be adding some patron-only episodes in the near future. So thank you for supporting us at whatever level that you choose, and thank you again for listening to Compassion and Cucumbers podcast.